Today we're going to talk about what I like to refer to as the me layer, which is when we have an interactive graphic, we want to be able to adjust the graphic so that it adjusts to the user actually cares about. Um, we're very self-centered creatures, and anytime I get to have some sort of interactive graphic that allows me to make the state of the graphic about something that I care about, whether it is someone like me. So if we're talking about economic data, then we might say, well, what if someone in your tax bracket, and you get to pick out your tax bracket or something like that, what happens to that sort of person? Another example is, what if we're looking at some sort of weather data or some sort of comparison, and it turns out to be a relationship with the town that I'm in or the state that I'm in. If it's the town or state that I'm in, I care about that, and I'm much more likely to read about it. Another example is if it's about my favorite team or my sports team or whatever political party that I care about. You know, so long as it's about the team or whatever that I support, I'm way more likely to read about it. And so giving your graphs the ability to let someone pick either someone like them or some place that they live or something that they have affiliated with really is pretty powerful. The first way we're going to look at this is using a website by 538.com. 538 is a political polling website, but in their non-political points in time, they also look at sports and a few other things. Really, they do a lot of very good data visualizations, and I really like them. In this particular case, we're going to look at American football, particularly the NFL, and sort of try to address the question about which are the best teams in NFL history. And one way that we're going to do this is something called an ELO, which is a simple measure of strength based on game by game results. And they calculated the ELO ratings for every game in league history. And using that, they can also then get the team ELO rating over the course of a season. And this graph that we have up here is the graph of the San Francisco 49ers. And you can see sort of at the start of the graph in 1946, they start out at 1300 and then they progress. Now over on this right hand side, you see that these ELO numbers, they have an average ELO that is standardized to be 1500. Teams start out at 1300, and you can sort of get this range. And I think this max in this 1750 and 1250 are sort of the max per season, but you can get a higher ELO rating for a particular game. Now at this bottom, we've got this little thing that I can scroll around and say, you know what, if I only care about a sliding window, I can slide this around. So I can mess around with how this graph looks, but by default, I think it starts out just looking at the whole history of the NFL. So for each team, you can see some highlights. The little dots represent national championships. So we can see that the San Francisco 49ers won in, let's see, does that allow me to click? So they win Super Bowl in 1982, then again in 85. And so you can kind of see what they did. So this is pretty interesting, but the critical aspect is that many people don't care about the San Francisco 49ers. What they might care about is their own favorites. And so you can scroll through all of the NFL teams. There's a bunch of defunct teams as well, but there's sort of all of the current ones. Now, maybe we care about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's say we do. And so we can see that they then started, and you find a peak ELO of this right around 2000, another peak, and then they're horrible for a while, and then they get a little bit better, and then now this last season they were a little bit worse again. So we can kind of compare this. Now, we can also compare with the second team as well. So if we have some sort of, um, uh, I guess, rivalry. Now, I don't know football well enough to know what the rivalries are, but you could then turn around and ask these. So let's look at the New England Patriots versus San Francisco 49ers. I just picked the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. Anyway, so you can kind of see when there's discrepancies and when they go back and forth. So this website is actually really interesting in that it allows you to sort of pick the teams that you care about or the rivalries that you care about. That's very, very impressive. Now, as you scroll down, it actually gives some very interesting discussions about individual teams. You can see San Francisco had a really strong run of nearly 20 years of being incredibly dominant. Um, you can see the Cowboys, how they went from really bad in the early 90s to being really a pretty dominant team um, in the 92 through 97 or so. So that's really, really cool. You can look at Green Bay, Dolphins. So this is actually really an interesting thing, but mostly I get to pick who I want to look at. Next, we're going to look at a website that looks at something called the birthday paradox. And we're going to kind of walk through this in an interesting fashion. But the critical aspect is that it's going to do something with me. In particular, it's going to look at my birthday. Let's do this. So I've already been through this a couple of years ago, so it already knows. So I was born on September 13th, and it's going to allow me to select that. When you go to pudding.cool and then you put in the address, it'll allow you to put it in your birthday. So I'm going to select my birthday, September 13th. And it says, cool, thanks, my birthday September 15th. We don't have the same birthday. How many people do you think we need to be in a room to have a 50% chance that two people have the same birthday? And now we get to kind of play around with this. And because I've already gone through this website, it actually doesn't allow me to change this, but when you go through it, it'll allow you to kind of make a guess here. So we could guess 20, we could guess 5. What do you think? I thought that we needed about 30, but then again, I teach probability, so yeah. All right, this seems like a good guess. There are 365 days in a year, but 30 people gives us a really big chance. And so the question is, what is the right answer? So even though my birthday really is kind of silly, and they're not really going to care about it, but the website still sort of is giving me this very clear, this is me and this is Russell, and now I am emotionally invested in this little yellow dude. So now they're asking me to keep going, and they're going, hey, can we do this? So we're going to look at this. And we're going to look at the last 21 people who just visited. Now, this is why they don't let me change my answer, is because if I repeatedly go through this over and over and over again, then for the next person who comes, it's going to be a little bit weird. So what they did was they took the last 21 people that visited this website, or 21 unique people, and looked at what birthday they inputted. And so in this particular case of 23 people, there in fact was a case where these two had doubles. So they're going to do this a whole bunch more time with a bunch more of the previous 23 people and sort of ask, well, for every group of 23 people, what percent of time do we have an overlapping birthday? So they're going to do these trials a whole bunch of times. And out of 20 trials, it looks like we have 14 successes and 6 failures. So that's actually higher than the what would be predicted. And so now they're going to do 1,000 trials and the last 23,000 people. So then they're going to go run through a bunch of the math that'll actually do this. And for 2 people, you only get 1 comparison as far as do they have the birthday. For 4 people, you get actually 6 comparisons. 6 people, 15 comparisons. And now you can start to see that even though the number of people is in the room is still pretty small with 23, we actually have 553 different comparisons to be able to say this person versus this person, do they have the same birthday? This person versus this, do they have? So all in all, this website almost completely ignored my birthday. I get to feel that I'm a little invested because at the very beginning they showed me on the little line compared to the author. But in general, even though the me aspect of it was really pretty trivial, it still worked and I still felt somewhat invested in it. So that's pretty cool. Both of these websites allow me to interact with the website and give some sort of information about myself or my interests so that they can customize the experience to me personally and the things that I care about. This is a really powerful hook, and it does a great job at getting people to be interested in the problem or the thing that you're trying to explain.